We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated. Secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
Today we have with us Shelley Pieterse, who is an executive alignment coach and former managing director at Accenture. So I was really excited to talk to her today because she helps us high-performing leaders move from that sense of overwhelm and overstimulation and overfunctioning into this much more focused and sustained success, which is what we focus on here, right? We talk about systems and streamlining and making our life easier while still being productive and achieving our goals and feeling good about it. So, welcome, Shelley. We're so excited to have you.
Hi, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. Yeah, and thanks for that great intro. I think you've covered a lot of it. As you said, I'm an executive alignment coach, and I specifically pull out the alignment bit because I think that speaks to a lot of us not necessarily being 100% in alignment with our roles, with identities, etc. And as you also said, I'm a former managing director at Accenture. So I have lived the life, I have walked the path of high pressure, high performer. And really, it's a lot of those lessons learned that has actually taken me down the path of doing executive alignment coaching now. I put together everything that I learned. I studied up on a couple of the core areas to say, well, how do I put this all together to help people who are like me? So I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I love the alignment piece and like you calling that out because it really is important to really recognize like when you're trying to do so many things and if you look at two different people who are trying to achieve and accomplish and be productive and do all the things, right? And climb the ladder, whatever that is for them in their journey, one is in alignment and one is not, that those two journeys look very different, right? One is overwhelmed, exhausted, stretching thin, feeling like they're trying to do everything at once and it feels impossible and it's just like they're up against a wall all the time. Whereas the other person, when they're in alignment, they're at peace, they're organized, they're productive, they're feeling good, right? They're not exerting that. They actually have more energy probably, right? So it's
Yeah.
two very different paths, and I want to ask you, like, that person that we're looking at that's not in alignment, why do they feel so overwhelmed? Why does that one little piece, quote unquote, little piece, make such a
Yeah.
difference?
Yeah, so look, I want to start by saying to everyone that you're not doing anything wrong. Because
Mm,
I think a lot of us overperformers, when we feel that overwhelm coming up, we try and squash it down
yeah.
and say, oh, I'm not doing something right, or I'm not performing as I should, or I just need to suck it up, or, excuse my use of the man up
Yeah, yeah.
terminology, right?
Yeah.
And we try and squash it. So want to start by saying you're not doing anything wrong, and there's nothing wrong with you. It's often largely around the fact that we're operating in a system or an identity that just no longer serves us, and it no longer fits how we're working. And I want to double click a little bit on that alignment terminology that I use. Now, misalignment can happen in a couple of different ways. It can be role misalignment. So, you're performing in one role, but the expectations of people around you might be something else. So,
Mm,
you're covering for someone else, so you're doing something different. So there could be a misalignment in role. There could be a misalignment in expectations. People are expecting you to do one thing, you're expecting to do something else because, you had a different discussion to the other person. And there's an identity misalignment as well, right? You're doing things that the company expects of you or that your team expects of you, but it actually might not be in alignment with internally what you want and who you want to be and how you want to show up every day. So that overwhelm sort of often is one of your warning signals that says
Mm,
something is out of alignment here, right? And that overwhelm can come from that alignment component, and it can come from a couple of other things as well. So I'm just going to keep running through the things that sort of come to mind. It's the misalignment. It's also because you could be managing your time and not
mhm.
your energy.
Oh, yeah.
Now, this one is an interesting one because in the past, people used to tell me that, and I was running so fast on that hamster wheel that I was like, what are you talking about? I don't even understand what you mean by managing time and not energy. I'm executing everything that I need to execute on. And there's a real difference here around that self-awareness that comes in. And when you start actually managing energy and not time, it is a big differentiator between feeling overwhelmed and not feeling overwhelmed. I've got a whole bunch of other things to say, but I'm going to pause there and just check and see. Do you have any other questions on those points, or is there anything else around that?
Yeah, well, it feels like a forcing, right? Like this, like over functioning, like you're productive. You're like, what do you mean? I'm doing all the things. I'm getting all the things out. I'm doing everything right, quote unquote, right? Like, but I'm not. I'm still not feeling good. Like I feel like so many people are stuck there. They're like, I'm literally doing all the things. Like, what's
Yeah,
why doesn't this
yeah,
work?
exactly. Which speaks to that point as well around alignment of identity, right?
Yeah.
And this was a big one for me, and it might resonate with a lot of people out there as well. After a while in your role, you take on certain identities.
Yeah.
So you'll take on an identity of a fixer, right? You are the person that everyone turns to when there is this problem. So, and you absorb all of that pressure.
Mm,
You're the one that's trying to keep everyone running in the right direction. You're the one that's picking up the pieces when other people haven't done what they were supposed to do. So you take on that identity, and that becomes part of your identity at work. But that's not who you actually are or who you want to be. And it's out of alignment with where you want to go. And we so often don't slow down long enough to actually check in and say, is this where I want to go? And is this aligned with who I want to be and the role that I want to take on? Or am I functioning reactively to an expectation or to an identity that I've taken on because I'm capable? Yeah. And a lot of us high
mm,
performers, because we're capable, we take on more because we're trying to get ahead of things. We don't like it when the system breaks.
yeah.
We like things to run very, very smoothly. We don't like it when the system breaks. So
Yeah.
when we see the train coming and we see a break coming, we're getting ahead of it and we're trying to fix it,
Yeah.
even if it's not our responsibility. So we take that on, and and then we become part of the system dependency. We
Mm,
become the bottleneck. So if we are out for a week, if we want to just spend time with the family, you want to go on vacation, you become the bottleneck because you're the fixer. So the system breaks around you when you've actually taken on roles within that system that is actually not in alignment with what your role should be.
yeah. I'm a visual learner and like my brain works in metaphors. So like as you're talking, I'm literally picturing like this boat and it's got a hole in it. And then this high achiever, high performer is like, "Oh my gosh, I have to fix that." So they like put their body up against that hole in the boat. Like, "Okay, I got it. I'm holding it.
Mm.
I'm holding it together so you
Yeah,
guys don't sink." And now you're like, "Okay, now we need you over here." No, 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 I can't. Like, so you can, it's like
yeah.
a visual way to like think about how that literally takes us from where, our highest and best use of our skills is needed.
Exactly. We've outgrown, as we go up in our careers, we outgrow the strategies that made us successful. So when we first entered that boat and we didn't know how anything worked, we were the person standing there holding it because we were learning how things around us worked. We were wanting to prove our capability. We were
Yeah.
wanting to prove that we were dependable. But we've now been on that boat for 5 years. We know how it works. Therefore, we can move to actually starting to orchestrate what's happening on the boat and
Yeah.
delegating to other people coming in so that we don't become that fall down person. We don't become the bottleneck. We grow with the system and we set up processes and systems around us to allow us to grow so that we don't become that fall down mechanism.
Right, right. Yeah. Like building in the system so that freedom is still a possibility versus like building yourself into the system so you're stuck there. And then of course you feel stuck there because we're humans, we want to grow and evolve. And then if we're just like stuck in a system like I can't move or the whole thing falls apart because I built myself into it, it of course you're gonna feel overwhelmed.
Exactly, right there. We have to design the system around us so that allows us the freedom and the ability and the capability to spread our own wings and to not feel that overwhelm.
Yeah. I know that was really difficult for me over the years in my own career of just like being that person that did everything, being the person everyone called, being the person that had all the answers, all the documents, all the access to everything. And then, it's almost like it feeds your ego too, because you're like, oh, I'm like so important, quote unquote, right? Everyone needs me. But at the end of the day, you're so exhausted and you don't know why. And over the years, I learned how to delegate and build systems that teams could use versus always having to come to me first versus giving them the power too to create their own little boats.
Yeah. So I speak a lot about what I call sustainable ambition or sustainable leadership. And I
Mm,
look at it from different angles. So I sit in a couple of boards where I very much talk about sustainable leadership. And then I also do the coaching where we speak about sustainable ambition. Now, the key point here is that because we have no immediate failure signals for us as high achievers, we're hitting all of our KPIs, we're hitting what the system, what the system, the corporate system, the work
yeah,
system needs us to
yeah,
do,
yeah,
we lose sight of the long term. So we are therefore solving for a short term problem, not for a long term sustainable answer. We might hit all of our KPIs in the next 6 months, but unless we're actually managing all of these things and managing the overwhelm and setting up systems and aligning with who we are and our energy and where we want to go, it becomes unsustainable over the long term. Because at some point, you can only push through for so long. We're human beings. We need to manage our energy and we need to be doing things that give us energy and not just deplete us.
right. Yeah. And I think we need to know where we're going too, right? Because if you're
Mhm.
like, I'm just going with the boat analogy. I don't know why it just came to me and it's staying. So
Go with it.
we're out in the middle of the ocean, right? We're on this boat and you have to figure out how to run this boat or ship or whatever it is. But you don't even know where you're going. Are we sailing to Africa? Are we sailing to China? Are we sailing to the US? Are we sailing to Iceland? Where are we going, right? If we don't know, and then you're just sitting there on your boat looking around at the ocean around you, I would feel pretty overwhelmed. Like I have no idea where I'm going or how to get there, right? But because you talk about that clarity piece, right? Being clear and
Mm,
knowing where you're going, that
mm,
all by itself takes away so much of that overwhelm.
hundreds. So it's like that short-term KPI, we're solving for the short-term KPI. I'm covering that whole.
Yeah.
Short-term, we're not thinking, right? But long-term, guys, come on, I can only stand here for so long.
Right.
We need to know where we're going, right? So that I know that I only need to be here for 6 hours because we're going to hit our destination. And, while I'm
Yeah.
standing here, I'm going to lean this way so that the boat goes in that direction. So it's those kind of things, right? It's the clarity of where are you going and then creating processes so that what you choose to do is sustainable.
Yes.
Because instead of me standing there for 6 hours, if we know where we're going, we can then say, okay, it's going to take 12 hours. I can only stand here for six. All right, guys, after 6 hours, I'm going to swap with you over there. Now you're going to stand here. And then we are going to direct it like this so that within 12 hours, we hit our destination. So we're not just stopping the boat from sinking, we're actually directing it to where we want to go.
Right. Yeah. It's that difference between just like looking busy or being busy and actually like strategically planning for where your company or your business or wherever it is you work, where you're going in your goals.
Exactly, which leads us to directly to the difference between being busy and being effective, which also talks to the
Yeah.
overwhelm problem. So many of us are just busy all the time. We're busy, busy, busy. But busy is being active, whereas being effective is actually having an outcome and an impact that we actually want to
Yes.
get to, which again links to clarity of where you're going, because you can only have an impact that matters if you know what impact and what goal you're trying to achieve. So, clear on your outcomes. What are your outcomes that you want? We can then measure where we're getting to as opposed to just being active all the time, right? So, I think about it as being busy is very reactive. You're
Yes.
responding to a system, right? Whereas
Mhm.
being strategic and being effective, you are actually defining the system. You're getting ahead of it, just setting up the system, and
Yeah.
you're running and you're being effective because you're getting outputs that you want. And you're making the hard decisions between what's important and you're trading off. Because if you're busy, everything's important. Whereas if you're
Yeah.
effective, you're picking what's important. Yeah. So I talk about the Eisenhower matrix quite often, and I find it quite useful. I'm not sure if you guys have spoken about it before. I'm sure you know it. And really just differentiating between what do you need to do, what do you need to delegate, what do you need to delete, right? So it's just understanding the difference between urgent and important, and what has to sit with you, what can you give away to someone else, what has to be done now versus what you just plan into your diary. And that's the difference around busy versus effective.
Right. Yeah. It's the difference between like just sitting there plugging a hole in a boat versus studying the map, deciding where you're going, planning your route on how you're going to get there, planning for storms that will come up along the way, right? Whereas in business, and whether it's your own business or you work for an organization, you're having those strategic planning calls. You're meeting with your team. You're talking to everybody from the top of the company to the entry level positions, right? And everybody knows where we're going. We know why. We know what our plan is. Everyone has their steps and their assignments, right? Like, because if you don't have that, you're definitely not going to get there.
Yeah. And that creates clarity, which links back to the other point. If we know where we're going, we know who's got the role. In the boat analogy, who's plugging the hole, who's rowing the boat, who's navigating, who's, checking the wind, who's got the sails. I'm not a sailor.
Mhm.
I'm just randomly picking things that I know are on a
Same. I have
boat.
no idea.
So, you know,
Sounds good to me.
who's who's doing each of those things? Because if you miss one of those things, you might miss your target. So,
Mhm.
you actually need clarity on what are the 10 things that has to happen if we're going to get there to the outcome that we want. Who's got ownership of each of those 10 things? Are they clear on their role in each of those 10 things? That creates clarity for each person. That creates alignment, at least role alignment for each person. And then you all pull in the same direction. If you don't have that, if there is no plan, if there's no strategy, if there's no system and there's no process, everyone's running around. Five people are doing the same thing, and then there are six tasks that no one's doing. And there you don't get to
Mhm.
where you're trying to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and with the identity piece that you mentioned earlier, like the alignment piece with identity, I was even thinking about like, if someone's the chef, downstairs on the boat, underneath in the kitchen, and they're cooking and they like hate cooking, or, and really they should be better like working on the sail, or the person on the sail like is actually, doesn't like being in that open. They'd rather be in a room downstairs so they don't feel like they're out in the open, right? Whatever. I'm just also making things up as we go, but it's it's that idea of like, yes, are you in the right position for you? And then also, does everyone know where you're supposed to be? Because when you're talking about, running around, no one really knows their job. One person's like, okay, let me turn this frying pan on. Let me go up and do something with the sail. And then the other person's like, wait, no, I gotta undo that because that's wrong. And it causes way more chaos and it burns up so much more of your energy.
Exactly. And I think this is where aligned leadership also comes into it. Because
Mhm.
if I, as a leader, am aligned within myself, I understand what alignment means from a role perspective, from an identity perspective, from an expectation perspective. Me as a leader, I know my team is as effective as getting that alignment right for all of them. So,
Yeah.
upfront, as a leader, if we are looking at sustainable leadership, sustainable ambition, First, I get it right for myself.
Mm.
Then, before I get on that boat with those people, I understand for each and every single one of those people, where do they want to go? What are their strengths? Which of the roles that I have on my boat are suitable to these 10 people? I've got one person who loves cooking. I'm not going to make the person who hates cooking the chef, right?
Yeah.
We are going to have the person who loves cooking as the chef. That's in alignment with their goals. But because I know what this alignment means, I have that conversation up front and I understand it and I understand what this person needs in terms of what feeds their energy, right? I know that this person wants to cook all 3 meals in the first 4 hours of the day. And then for the last 4 hours, they want to be on deck feeling the wind in their face. Okay, let's arrange around that because that means we get fantastic cooking. The chef's energy is managed. They're not going to, throw the pots off the boat and walk off because they're exhausted and no one's listening to them. So we
Yeah.
structure around that because that's what they love doing. It's how they manage their energy. They want to do 4 hours on, 4 hours off. As long as we're hitting our target, which is 3 meals a day, however, we can manage that person's energy and their role alignment and make sure that they are feeling like they are achieving and they're managing their energy. That's how we'd want to do it. But we can't do it unless we, as leaders ourselves, understand it and get it right within ourselves. It then just has that domino effect into our teams. They learn it, domino effect into their teams. So it starts with us getting it right.
That's so good. And I love the way you explain that and like dial that down because it really is, it does start from the top and like and starts from the beginning of like planning ahead and being that intentionality and the alignment up front can change an entire like culture of an organization, big or small. And it's funny when we think about it, like I'm laughing when you're talking about like, oh, if someone hates cooking, I wouldn't make them the chef, right? But in the real world, it's unbelievable how often that actually happens. Like you knew someone, so you got this job, or you happen to know how to do this skill, so you started a business around it. And then years down the line, you hate what you're doing and you're that chef on the boat and you're like, why do I hate my job? Well, it's because we don't stop and like ask those questions or really truly like listen to our nervous system, right? Because I think our nervous system really does intertwine to all of that because when you're managing a business or whether your own company or someone else's organization, what you're also managing is like a whole room full of human beings and a whole room full of nervous systems that react differently and think differently and feel differently. So I think that's a huge part of it as well.
Yeah, look, I think this is also the difference between your first job
Mm,
versus when you're further down the line, right?
yeah.
The first job, we just want to get experience. You want to get the paycheck, you want to start understanding things. And to be honest, a lot of the time we're so young that we don't know yet what we love and what we don't love, and what we're really great at and what we're not great at. And it's all about that learning process when we start off, and it's about creating that credibility, learning things. And often at that point in time, we're just pushing, we're just hustling, and we're just working crazy hours, etc. And you can do that in your 20s. you know
Yeah. Yeah.
then as you start getting more self-aware and start figuring out what works and what doesn't work for you, then you can start making more informed choices around, what, this worked, this didn't work. When I'm doing this, I'm not managing my energy, I'm out of alignment. When I'm doing that, and you make slow tweaks that starts guiding you towards what works for you. It's not about quitting your job and overnight saying, I hate doing this, and then,
Yeah.
going in for a new job in a completely different industry the next
Yeah.
day.
Yeah.
It's about the self-awareness that develops that starts allowing you to see the patterns in yourself. So I'm a big fan of data and systems and processes. So I'm one of those believers that everything is data. So if you're starting to feel overwhelmed, let's look at the data. Where is it coming from? When did it happen? What triggered it? And when you start building up that data, you start seeing patterns, right? And those patterns are what's impacting your nervous system. So and I'll use the example where we've got back-to-back meetings on a day. Your very first meeting of the day is someone that consistently frustrates you. They do not listen. They don't understand what you're saying. They never do what you ask them to do. You spend the first hour of your day frustrated. You go into the rest of your meetings on that day frustrated. It impacts your decision capability. It impacts your patience. It impacts your ability to think clearly because your nervous system is now already high strung because of that one meeting in that morning, right? And when you start realizing that and you start designing the system around it, you can start making different choices that's going to protect your nervous system. You can say, you know what, I'm not going to have that meeting first thing in the morning. I'm going to have it last thing because I'm going straight from work to gym so I can run off the frustration on a treadmill.
Mhm.
And that's how I'm going to discharge. It's going to protect my nervous system, protect my decision making ability for the rest of that day if I just move that meeting to the end of the day. Or if I delegate it, I'm not going to deal with that person. Someone else in my team who's got a better relationship deals with it. These are the tiny tweaks that you can make that actually protects your energy and ends up protecting your nervous system because all of these little bitty things add up, right? And it gets you to a little bit more of a frazzled state. So it affects how you process information when you get more frazzled. You're not thinking as clearly any longer. Your perspective is a little bit warped, right? Your priorities become a little bit warped as well because now you're not thinking clearly. I've been known to get into a state where I get so frustrated with someone that even if they say something and make a good point, I can't hear it because
Oh yeah.
I'm already
Yes.
so frustrated with them.
Yep.
Nervous system regulation, right? It's about
Yeah.
managing those little things that add up to big frustrations. And it starts off with understanding the role that your nervous system is playing, understanding what triggers you, understanding all those little bitty things and managing those little bitty things and setting up the system around you so that those little bitty things are reduced.
Yes. Oh my gosh, it's so good and it's so real. And I love that you're talking about this right now because I actually just had a conversation with my mom this morning and it's not work related, it's personal related, but it's the same thing. It's like managing and building around our nervous system. And for me, I have like a long history of like body image and things like that. So I had to buy a dress for an event, like a very, very formal dress, which is like, how the sizing works with those and the cut and the fabric, and it's not forgiving and it was a whole stressful thing. And she's like, like you just the same way you teach about this for, your goals, why don't you like build in like a meditation before and something to go like I love what you said, like go to the gym, like schedule your gym block right after it and go burn off that energy. I'm like, man, I could have used that yesterday. Like, and so like, but it's so good because to recognize that, and it goes back to what you were talking about earlier, like it's not managing your time as much as it is your energy. And if you start off that day, that example you gave of like this one person frustrated me and now everybody for the rest of the day feels that, or I have to do a hard thing that's like a trigger for me. For me, it's like, dress shopping. And, now my
Yeah.
partner has to deal with that, right? Because I didn't manage that for myself, right? And that can go into our personal lives, that can go into our business. So I just love the way that you explain that and how real that is for so many of us. And it's like it's so simple, and yet making that little tweak, they're really small changes, right? And there's
Yeah.
really small intentions, but they can make a huge difference. So really love that. Thank you.
Yeah. My pleasure. Look, I think as I was going through all of this on the ground, I started looking at all of the different components that were contributing to this, right? So, there was stress management, there was productivity, there was alignment to values, etc. And for each one of those things, I then decided, you know what, I'm going to go and get certified in each of those areas. So I then went and did stress management coaching certification. I did Ikigai coaching
Yeah.
certification, alignment to values. I did productivity coaching certification. And when you start putting all those blocks together, you start seeing all the little bits and pieces, right? And I think Linked to your point, one of the key things that I learned in the stress management piece was we need to treat our mental health like we treat our physical health. We actually need mental health routines that helps us manage our mental health. So a lot of us, we might go to gym every day, but we're not meditating. We're not doing breathing exercises. We're not watching what we eat because, sugar can, for example, put us in a really, really high strung state, as does caffeine for a lot of people. Without knowing that we actually need to be managing all of those things as well, it's all part of that bigger picture around setting up the systems around you that's going to support your nervous system. And one of those things is just understanding, how do you respond to stress? What burns stress off for you? Is it going to gym? Is it meditation? Is it not eating chocolate? Is it steering clear of caffeine? Each of these little things, as you become aware of it and you build it into your systems for you personally, that sets you up for sustainable leadership, sustainable ambition. And that's your sustainable processes that's going to get you where you want to go in the long term.
Yes. Oh, amazing. Well, I really appreciate how you bring it back to that sustainable ambition, and that term just like resonates with me so much because I'm like, yeah, anyone can be ambitious for a day, a week, a month, however long, but can you do it long term? Can you like is what you're doing today? I ask my members of my membership, my goals membership this all the time. It's like, is what you're doing today and how you're going after this sustainable long term? Will this work next month? Is this what you're doing just for this season, or is this what you're going to do always, right? Like there's like really looking at that and evaluating that, and just having you here today, I'm just so grateful because you're helping us see and look at that sustainable ambition and look at our own alignment and look at like, am I clear enough to where I can, clear out that overwhelm that's not necessary? Am I paying attention to my energy? Am I paying attention to my nervous system so that I can make a decision, so that I can, you know, small shift at a time, get to that better path that then feels better for me. So I'm just so grateful that, you're here sharing that with us in really real ways, and, just such a good conversation. You've had me laughing this whole episode. Just, you bring such a light and joy to it. So it's so much fun. And I want to, close us out with, we covered a lot, right? There's so many things we can do and look at and pay attention to. If you were to speak directly to the listener of this episode and,
Mm.
and tell them like the one thing that you want them to walk away after listening and either go do, think about, consider, mull over, journal on, like what would that one thing you want to make sure that they don't miss from this conversation? What would that be?
Look, I think if you're going to walk away with one thing, it's just to sit down and ask yourself what matters today
Mm,
for me. Not what do I need to get through, not what does everyone else want from me. Define what your definition of success is for today, and you block that time and you protect that time to do that one thing so that you don't get distracted, you don't take on what everybody else wants. And if your definition of success for today is to make it to your child's concert, that's how you set up your day. If your one thing for today is to get through a report, you set up the time and you do it. Now, I want to say that this is easier said than done
yes.
because protecting a one specific goal means trade-offs, and people are uncomfortable with trade-offs. People
Yes.
are also uncomfortable with uncomfortable conversations. Because if your one thing for today is making your daughter's recital this evening, and you need to say no to your boss when your boss wants something, that's your uncomfortable conversation. So, one thing for you to do is to set your definition of success for today, and then you do it for tomorrow, and then you do it for the following day, and you protect that time. What's important to you, you schedule it. If it's something hard, you do it first thing in the morning so that it's done with. That's your one thing. Because overwhelm, to link it back to the very first point, isn't always that you have too much to do. It's because you're unclear on what matters the most. And if you can just set that one priority every day, that overwhelm goes away.
Amazing. Thank you, Shelley, so much. This has been such a gift. For anyone wanting to get in contact with you or reach you, how can they do that?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So come on over. I blog and I write every week around all of the topics around sustainable ambition. I also have a couple of things available on the website. There's a snapshot, which is just a really quick assessment that you can do. It asks you a couple of questions and it gives you a view of just where you are on the spectrum around sustainable ambition. And to add on to that, I called everything that I do glimmer because I don't know if you've seen that meme that a glimmer is an opposite of a trigger. So it's very
Yeah,
much me around light at the end of the tunnel. So everything that I do is around those 7 letters. So it's around your goals being the G, it's around your motivations with your M and your mindset, etc. So I look at all of these different elements, and that snapshot gives you a pretty good view of it. If you want to do a quick assessment to see where you're at.
that's amazing. And we'll have all of that linked in the show notes for anyone listening and for Shelley. And, I just want to thank you again. This has been such a pleasure having this conversation with you. And, I really think it's going to bring a lot of value. So thank you so much.
Awesome. It's been lovely. And thank you again for having me.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.